and welcome to another episode of The Influential Nonprofit. It's me, Marianne. You know me, I work with nonprofit leaders to grow their influence so they can ask for and receive all they want, need, and deserve. And I have a special guest today, and I have not interviewed like a founder or an ED in a long time. I either create my own content or I interview other experts who are maybe former, ED. So I'm excited to talk to a founder and CEO. This is Lynn Margherio, and you founded Cradles to Crayons. That is very cool. And we're going to talk all about your nonprofit, how you started it, how you grew it, and all that. But if you know me, I always ask this question first, which is, tell me, Lynn, by way of introduction, right? Something that you're proud of that you don't get to brag about a lot.
That I don't get to brag about a lot. I am proud of my swimming. I enjoy doing open water swimming, and when I sign up for an event, it gives me a lot of focus and motivation to train and to get in and swim. And so it's something I'm proud of, something I really enjoy doing. I get to do it with my best friend, and it's really grounding. And the training is really meditative.
Yeah. So have you been a swimmer your whole life?
I was a swimmer when I was a little kid. I peaked at age 10. And then I quit at age 13. And then when I turned 40, my brother had done, a swim event when he turned 40. He's a couple years older than me. And so we decided to do an event together. And ever since then, I just have made swimming a part of my kind of weekly routine, and I really love it.
That's awesome. And okay, I have another question. So where do you open water swim? And is that scary?
We could have
two
a
questions.
whole 60 minutes on is that scary and how do you get out of your own head? Because the movie that probably impacted me the most was Jaws. When I was a little kid.
I was a little kid too.
Oh my God. And
every movie in the 70s was like going to kill us, like Poseidon Adventure, Inferno, like
and my kids, when they watch anything from that vintage, they turn it off. They're like, oh my God, those special effects are so terrible. Yeah. How could you ever have been frightened of that? In any case, so I like to do open water swimming here in Massachusetts, just in the harbor, and then also down in Rhode Island, in just off Jamestown and in North Kingstown.
That's cool. All right. And I'm assuming, like, in all these things that we love, there are skills, right, that transfer, because you said you could do like a whole 60 minutes on moving through fear and the unknown. And I bet those are some of the skills that help you found an organization, right?
They are. And I think for me, sometimes saying something out loud or just saying I'm going to commit to this and signing up for it is, and having an accountability partner too.
Yeah.
Those are things that really help to motivate me and keep me from just getting caught up in whatever else could be distracting for the moment. So having a conversation with someone who, is your spouse, your best friend, your parent, your business partner, whatever it is both a way to make a statement that this is something that I want to do, that I care about. It's also a great way to get feedback and to get encouragement to take, to get through some of the hard times. And there are always challenging times.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so you are the founder and CEO of Cradles to Crayons. I'm sure when you were like 10 or 13 or whatever, you're like, I'm going to grow up and found a nonprofit. What made you want to start this? First, tell us just a little bit of what it is, and then what made you want to start this?
Yes, so Cradles to Crayons is our mission is to end clothing insecurity for kids experiencing low income or poverty, homeless situations. And so kids who do not have ready access to clothes that fit, that make them feel good, or that are appropriate for the weather. And so we want to be there as a resource for them, and then also to raise awareness about this hidden need that is as basic as food or shelter, but often gets left behind.
Okay, so and what made you want to do this?
My background is business consulting. So when I was 10 or 13, I was not thinking about becoming a nonprofit leader. Instead, I went into consulting after I graduated, and then I went into public policy and worked in the Clinton administration. And the idea for Cradles to Crayons was really when I was home visiting my family in Michigan. I was helping my niece, who was probably 2 at the time, get dressed. And as I was going through her drawers, I was noticing things that had tags on them, but clearly were too small for Elise. And I kind of filed that away. And then when I was visiting my brother and friends who had kids, because I didn't have kids of my own at the time, I just saw, kids need so much, but they grow so fast that something that they might wear today is no longer going to fit them in 3 months' time. Or they might get something that's the wrong size for the season that they're in, or maybe just a color or a style that doesn't necessarily meet their personal preference. And so it occurred to me that there could be an opportunity here. I had my consulting supply chain hat on, and I said, oh, this could be a source of ever recharging clothing and other essentials for kids. But if I could get them from where they are stuck, they might be stuck in kids' homes, they might be stuck in on store shelves, and move them to where they are really needed, I could set up set up a supply chain to move these items from where they're no longer needed to where they could really make a difference in the life of a child and family. So that was the impetus. It was just this really kind of simple experience of helping my niece get dressed.
And so now what is the organization? So like 20 to 23 years later, what's the organization like?
We are headquartered in Boston, Massachusetts, and we serve kids across Massachusetts, across greater Philadelphia, Chicagoland, New York, and San Francisco. And we provide about 1 million packages of clothing and other essentials to kids each year. And we mobilize over 50,000 volunteers in the process of doing that. So that's
Wait, hold on, 50,000 volunteers. Oh my gosh. That's a stadium.
it's a lot of people. And people want to help. That's
Yeah,
the really good news, is that when you're in the nonprofit space, you don't have to do it by yourself, because people want to be part of making their communities better. They want to be doing something where they're giving back, and so it was really tapping into that innate desire that we all have to be kind of good people.
sure.
And so every day we have kids as young as 5 volunteering with their families. We've got school groups we've got corporate groups, we've got alumni groups, we've got people who are retired who want to come in and volunteer, you name it. We've got this whole community of people who are helping us out in our physical locations, which we call Giving Factory warehouses. And then we also have a virtual donation platform that's called Giving Factory Direct. So you can get involved by telling us, I've got girl size 10 clothes to donate, and we match you with a child who wears girl size 10 clothes. You get a shipping label, put a couple of outfits into a box, take it to your UPS store, and we get it to a child who needs the clothing that you have.
So the clothing, is there like a standard for the clothing? Like it's new, or like, what is that? Because there's really no filter, right? Like I have the clothes, so or there's nobody that really knows what they look like.
Yeah, it's a great question. We have a value that quality equals dignity, so that every article of clothing that makes it through our Giving Factory warehouse process is something that that child is going to feel good putting on, and that parent or caregiver is going to feel respected and valued for for those clothes. And so it's something we take really seriously, and hence all of the volunteers that we have coming into our warehouses. We put them to work sorting, inspecting, and then packaging up these donations, because we don't want something getting through our process that isn't of the highest quality and is something you'd feel good for your own child to wear.
Right. It's something I would pick for my kid, or I would want
Yep.
for my kid. Okay. I mentioned this before we hit record. Like I got an email today from somebody who's like, "Oh, Marian, I follow you." And I think this happens a lot. I just, I want to pull it up real quick. Hold on, so I can see what he said, which is, I have attended many of your webinars, enjoy information. I need help finding startup funding. So he has at Lights Back On, our mission is to provide essential lighting solutions to individuals or family affected by natural disasters, poverty, or limited access to electricity. Solid thing, right? I get it. And there's so much good to unpack there. And I'm going to email him back and invite him into a conversation with me. But I think his dilemma is a pretty standard one of when you start something, how do you start it? I was on the board of an organization, like when you started yours, like in the early 2000s, Stray Rescue of St. Louis. And I just remember sitting in this living room with these people, and we had like $600 in vet bills and $400 in the bank. And we're like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And now this organization literally is in the middle of a, $25 million capital campaign to build this huge facility. And they just got $1 million donation. And they are a multi-million-dollar organization and employs hundreds and hundreds of people. And I always say everything starts around the kitchen table, right? Like, everything starts with an idea that somebody had. And, either to relieve suffering, right? Like in their, like either they experience something negative and they don't want other people to experience, or like you saw an opportunity, right, to solve a problem. Like, oh my gosh, hey, as a consultant supply chain person, that's right? Like I can see your light was going, oh, I could get these things and these things. And it seems so simple. And then I bet it wasn't. Right? Right. Like it makes so much sense. So the question is, how did you get going? And what would you say to somebody like my friend George here, who is just starting out, who has a great idea, like that's really what people need help with? Because he said, the foundations, they want me to have everything established and fully functional already.
Yeah, yeah. It's a great question. And, it sounds like George has already done his market research, which is where I started. And I think, many ideas begin where you really sort of test, what is this idea? How can I learn? How can I make it better? Is this something that is there truly a need out in the community for what I am proposing? And then let me ask the experts how I could execute this so that it's providing value to the community and it's something that could grow over time. So I'd say that's kind of the place to start. And then it's putting those, once you've kind of gone through and gotten that information, it's putting it down on in a business plan, figuring out how would you get it off the ground? How much money is it going to take? Who do you need to employ to do the work? Or could you get it done by volunteers? And what are the supplies you need? So you're putting together your budget. And then it's going out and starting and talking to people who love you, who like you, or at the very minimum, they're not going to run to the other side of the street when they see you coming, which sometimes the people you like and love get to that point after they've heard from you and have been asked for the millionth time
Right,
for
right.
help with something. But it's really starting with who you know. It's those people that you were talking about around the kitchen table, who are united either by the cause or by the person who is putting it together and saying, I want to support you because what you do matters to me, and this idea sounds like it has legs. And so it's getting response from about your idea, about your business plan, from people who you're open to hearing maybe tough feedback from, and or a lot of encouragement from, and then starting to widen that circle by going to those same people and saying, who do you know who could be interested, or who might be interested in what I'm doing? And so I would say those are the very first places to start.
Right. And I always tell people this, there's no wand, right? There's no like secret wand that's going to unlock all of this. It's the, and this is why I think what I do is important. It's the work of relationship building.
Yeah.
And, and something like that, like sometimes foundations that they fund things that are established, but I also think that there are foundations or people or family foundations that are willing to, they like the startup, right? They like to help somebody get something off the ground. And it's just like a venture capitalist, right? There's people who want to invest in businesses that are established, but there's people who they like to invest in the startup, the new thing. And I think it is just like kind of right, like just shopping that around and knowing your audience. So
Yeah.
after did you then start to like get donations, or because there's the clothing donations, but then of course there's the monetary donation.
Right, right. Well, it's and you got to do all of it actually.
Right, yeah,
So,
yeah, right, that was it. The clothes need to be moved by somebody, and
yeah.
right.
Yeah. So, I mean, for us, the very first step was to say, okay, how do I build inventory so that I actually have something to provide out into the community? So that for me was the first step. A lot of cold calls. You mentioned relationship building. Sometimes you don't even have a place to start. But so you think about, well, who are the likely sources for these goods? And then, you just start getting, I mean, this back in the day, I would get on the phone and, and not be in front of a computer screen and emailing. It's so much easier now to find people and
Yes.
to communicate. But it's really about reaching out and knowing that you're going to get a lot of no's at the beginning, but then they're going to be yeses too. And so, in the early days for me, it was calling up nursery schools and it was calling up elementary schools and saying, hey, would you do a drive for cradles to crayons? And I was getting some feedback early on to say, who is Cradles to Crayons? We've never heard of this organization. How do we know that what we give to you is going to make it to a child who really needs it? And so I took that feedback on and I said, okay, I need to align with organizations that people know and trust. And so I started piloting with two very well-known organizations, our Safety Net Hospital in the Boston area, and then a statewide organization as well, and was able to share with these schools the next time I called them, or a different school, and say, I'm Cradles to Crayons, we're brand new, but and would you do a drive? The clothing that we collect would go and support kids that are being served through the Mass Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children and Boston Medical Center. And so and we're not going to be charging for these, for the donations that we make. And so it was really doing a lot of listening early on, and then figuring out, okay, here's a barrier. How can I remove that barrier and then kind of learn from that and build over time?
Yeah, and what I'm hearing in our conversation is you brought up like receiving feedback, really listening to what people have to say about the plan, about the structure of your organization, understanding what barriers people are, there's a trust factor. Okay, I'm hearing let me go
Yeah.
find a trusted partner, and we can, and just receiving that feedback, which I think is so important, and not just getting started is anytime.
Yeah.
Right, like, because people will tell you what they want if you are willing to listen, if you're willing to receive that. When I coach people, I said, you don't have to pitch or sell anything. You just listen. People tell you what they want, what they need, and then you can, address that. It's instead of trying to convince you, oh no, here's what I'm saying, Lynn. Instead of saying, oh no, it's gonna be fine. Like, oh, okay, well, tell me more about that.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. Yeah. We just don't know who you are. We're not. Oh, what if I would align with an organization with that? Oh, yeah. Then, okay. Oh, okay. Got it. Right. You see what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Gonna lean into that, and really listen to what people want.
Yeah, absolutely. You find the experts. And
Mhm.
I still do that,
Yeah.
23 years, 22 and a half years into this. There are people who I reach out to all the time to just say, hey, I'm thinking about this. What do you think? Have you ever come upon this challenge? And now, because I haven't a bunch of experience too, I get some of those same phone calls or emails from people asking what our experience has been,
Mhm.
and so it's all about because people want to share. You want to be a resource. People want to help.
They
I mean,
do.
I
They love
started
to
out by saying
share.
that, and I honestly believe that people in their hearts want to help.
They do. That is the contribution. Giving back is, one of our highest order need. And so the ability to give back is very fulfilling for us. I want to tap into something because you mentioned something, or like, you don't have to do it alone. And
Yeah.
you absolutely don't have to do it alone. And I know a lot of people, especially people who follow me, who listen to my podcast, there is a sense of isolation, the lonely executive director, like I carrying this thing. How, in your experience, what can you share about how you enrolled people in this vision and how you built up, I'm sure the volunteers at the beginning, your board, your staff, whatever. What did you do to create this community of support?
Yeah, again, it's starting out small and it's starting with who you know, and then trying to grow beyond that and who you want to know. So that's the other piece. There's the people in your immediate circle, and then there are those experts, or there are the philanthropists, or there are the you know, government officials. There are any number of stakeholders that may be really important to the success of your idea. And it's literally jotting down a list of, if I could dream big, who would I get, and who would I get a meeting with, or who would I get to respond to an email, or, you know, or a phone call, and then try to network your way to that person, or say, you know, try to reach out to that person. Maybe they refer you to somebody else, but you're making progress. And like I say, I have heard a lot of no's over the years, a lot of no's at the very early days. And there'd be some days where I'd be, you know, really ready to throw in the towel. And then I'd get a yes. And I'd be like, I'm back at this. Like,
Yes.
this is the right
Woohoo!
thing to do.
No,
Let's go. So you do need those wins. You need to appreciate the small wins, which I'm not always as good at that as I could be. But it's keeping in the back of your mind. You might have this big vision. You know, in our case, there are 20 million kids who are at risk of clothing insecurity across the US. And we're far from being able to, you know, to reach all of those kids, but we're, you know, we're making progress. And so it's looking at, okay, where are we today? Where do we want to be? And then putting in place some, you know, reasonable stretch goals, and then celebrating them.
yeah, really celebrating the wins, the gratitude of that. You know, I had a career coach many years ago, and she taught me the beauty of a no, and that's what I coach people on. Like, you're going to hear a lot of no's, but if you stop hearing no's, you stopped working, right? So the
Mhm.
no, so okay, no, great, because every time I hear a no, that just means I'm closer to a yes. And so when I was like, my first job in nonprofit, like in the early 90s, and I would get a job rejection. This had to be like an interview job rejection, right? Like, I would go for an interview and I didn't get the position, but I would go get job rejection shoes. So I'd go get a new pair of shoes to celebrate, because that job rejection meant that there was something better for me that was ready
Yeah.
to come to me. And as long as I kept hearing a no, I would eventually hear a yes. But sometimes, right, and also what you said, the no's get heavy and makes you want to crawl under your desk and cry. And then, I talk about sovereignty, about the idea of sovereignty, like the undefended queen of, I say, how valuable I am, right? And that's part of, like, holding that sovereignty, that
Mm.
vision for yourself, for this organization. And then while you're sifting through the no's and the redirections and all of that and finding your way, it takes some tenacity, and it takes
Yes.
being able to just work through the nose. Okay, well, that's not that direction. Then let's try this direction. Let's try this direction. And I do feel like a lot of time what happens is, and this is for folks like, even in working in established organizations and fundraising today, it's like, oh my God, no, 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 I'm just never going to hear a yes. And it can wear you down. And then if that one little yes, or that one call back or something, and you're like, okay, now I can keep going, because most things fail not because it was a bad idea. It's just because people didn't like, when they started hearing no, they weren't prepared. They did not know how to
Yep.
emotionally work through that.
Yes. No, I couldn't agree with you more. And I do like I it's a law of numbers too. I mean, with direct marketing, I don't know what the statistics are anymore with that industry, but it's like 1% success if you're sending out these messages. So 99 out of 100 communications are going to come back with no, or nobody's going to respond. And so it's sort of a silent no. But there's that one. And so you just have to keep plowing through the nose to get to your yes. And then also the nose can teach you something, because it
Mhm.
may be that what you're emphasizing is the wrong thing to emphasize. So your pitch may need to be improved. It may be that the way that you've thought about providing a product or a service is um, maybe there's a different way of doing it that you hear when you're getting a no, and that causes you to just reevaluate and learn. And so it's listening to what is being communicated in the no, and figuring out how can I just give this information more effectively, or how can I take in that feedback, make adjustments, and then come back and
Yeah.
see if I can get to a yes with either that person or, someone down the road.
Or maybe it's just that wasn't the right fit and it's okay.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
I can make
Yep.
adjustments, or that wasn't a good match and that's totally
Yep.
fine,
Yep. Yep. Going back to our George, foundations may not be the best place, the big foundations,
Right.
but to your point, a family foundation, or maybe there's an entrepreneur in his local community who remembers what it's like
Yes.
to
Yes.
get started. And if he did a little research and found that there's, someone who's a successful entrepreneur now, be a great place to just call them up or find a way to, reach out to that person and see. So anyway, there are other there are a lot of different potential funders. There are a lot of different stakeholders and different paths, and it's finding the right path for what you are trying to do.
Yeah. It's just staying in motion, right? Like,
Staying
and
in motion.
yeah. So what
Yes.
is next for you, for the organization? No, and the next 22 years.
Yeah, it's a great question. I shared that there are 20 million kids who are at risk of clothing insecurity, and you don't really hear much about that need. You hear about hunger, you hear about housing insecurity. Um,
Well, I want to say really quick, it seems like clothing is everywhere, and one of the problems that we have is like fast fashion, and and like the overabundance of clothing. So it's surprising to me to realize that there's not access to clothing.
Yes, isn't that it? I mean, so there's an opportunity and there is a great need, and it's trying to match those things. And so for us, what we are focused on going forward is building awareness of the very fact that kids are going without a warm winter coat, going without shorts and t-shirts on a hot summer day. They're going without shoes. Babies don't have diapers. And it's building awareness of that so people can take action in their own local communities to address the need that is right in their own hometowns, while at the same time talking to policymakers, putting it on their radar that clothing is in need alongside food and shelter. But there's no government funding, or very little government funding for this need. And then continuing to serve more kids directly through our distribution platform of our Giving Factories and Giving Factory Direct. So it's a three-pronged approach as we move forward: awareness, education, and direct distribution.
Okay, that's lovely. And I love that awareness, education, direct distribution, and really looking at all levels of the problem, right? From the policy to the individual
Yep.
receiving it, because it's all part of that ecosystem. You what is like how many staff? Like what's your organization structured like?
Yeah, so we are a single 501(c)(3), and we have locations in Boston, Philadelphia, and Chicago, and we have a national team of people who are in those same communities, and a couple of others. And we've got about 105 staff, and we are both really focused on providing services in, that meet the needs of the local community, but also doing it with standards and best practices that we can share across our business units so that we continually improve, become more efficient, and are able to just be a better resource for the kids and families who rely on us.
Wow. So there's no stopping you right now, is there?
I wish we did not have to exist as an
Yes.
organization. Um, but there is, to your point, there is so much clothing out there that is going to waste, and it's finding its way into landfill. So organizations like Cradles to Crayons, and others who, might think, perhaps after this podcast, like, yeah, I'm gonna figure out how I can help meet the clothing need in my local community. There's plenty of supply out there. It's just a matter of getting that person who's got clothing that are in kids sizes to think differently about what they're going to do with the
Mm.
clothes that their child has outgrown, gently used, or may have never used. And instead of, putting in landfill, getting the very best quality clothing that they have, and ensuring that it can get to a child who needs it.
Did you ever consider in your past tempted to expand your mission? Because the clothing is just one issue, that probably families are facing. That what I think is, for me, from a just a pure marketing branding perspective, is like you do this one thing, right? Like, did you ever think about expanding, or did you like go and then bring it back, or did you try that for a while? And
So we started out as being a resource for kids essentials. So it was clothing, books, toys, baby gear, school supplies. And over time, what we realized was that there are certain needs that are foundational, and that if we focus on meeting those very foundational needs, we can do a better job in serving that need, because trying to do and be that one-stop shop for everything a kid needs meant that we couldn't focus enough in on ensuring that we had a good supply of the most critical items. So we did start out wider, and we
and then
have
really
have
narrow down.
narrowed.
There's a phrase, I don't know who taught it to me, but it's called the riches are in the niches, right? Like the more
Mm.
focused you can be, and people think that that's limiting, right? Like, oh, if I'm only doing this one thing, like, but it's actually the opposite. It's very freeing, because then when you're focused in on this one thing, and I'm not talking about services, I'm just talking about the impact that you make, then it's easy for people to connect with it.
Yeah. I think there's definitely truth to that. And then it's a matter of as well collaborating with
Hmm.
other organizations. I mean, we reach kids through a network of a few hundred social service agency and school partners across our footprint, and they are on the front lines providing services to the kids or to their parents or caregivers, and they're the ones who see the need. But by being a resource that they can reliably count on for, clothing or for diapers for their kids, allows them to be able to focus on what they are there to do. Might be to connect their community to services, and it might be healthcare, it might be education that they're focused on. But if they can reliably get that basic need met through us or an organization like us, it allows them to not have to do that.
Sure. Yeah. And right, and we can all work in partnership. Like, again, we don't have to do it all.
Yeah. Yeah,
We don't have to do it alone.
that's right.
And it's true. No, I also see, like, in my community, there's like a duplication. So, oh, this one organization provides clothes for kids in foster care, and then this person started this nonprofit for clothes, and all were very well intentioned. Maybe look at the landscape, and like, there could be somebody like your organization who's already doing it, that you could tap into that model instead of creating it all for yourself.
Yep. I hear that, you hear that all the time about why are there so many organizations doing what appears to be the same thing? And I do think there's a need for communication between organizations that are doing similar or the same work to figure out, is it a geographical reach? Is one organization focused on these 10 neighborhoods in the greater Boston area or in St. Louis, and this other organization is focused on different neighborhoods, and so together they are meeting the collective or more of the collective need. There are some occasions where it would make sense to have more of a formal partnership or aligning, or maybe even consolidation of services. But it's always worth a conversation to figure out what is the niche that organization is filling. Can they do it better, more efficiently, less cost? Share best practices if they do it in partnership, or should one maybe not ever not continue?
Great. Thank you so much for this conversation. I find this very inspiring. I hope other people do too. And just hearing you talk about just the simple work of relationship building, conversations, feedback, right? Listening to the guidance and wisdom, creating strategic partnerships. It's so simple, yet it's such a good reminder of what this is really just what it takes. There's no special formula. It's just that work.
And there are no shortcuts.
I said, I don't have a wand. If I did, I'd wave it for you. I promise.
Yeah.
But I just don't have a wand. All right. I always close out with the last question. So I told you my brother lives in Cambridge. You're in Cambridge, and like, he's down here a lot. I'm up there not very often. I am due for a trip. So obviously we'll wind up in a karaoke bar somewhere in Cambridge. Lynn, what's your go-to song?
Oh, my go-to song. You know what? I have ditties in my head all the time, and my husband and my kids are wondering, why do I always have these random sound bites in my head? There's not any particular go-to song. There's just a lot of snippets of nonsense that bring me joy and keep me
All right.
humming
Well,
all
we're
day.
gonna have to work out one of those into a song one day. I make no apologies for my love of karaoke. And
what's your favorite song, Marianne?
well, that's a very long and complicated question, Lynn. But I did sing on Friday night. I went to karaoke and I did sing Fergie MILF Money. And this guy who plays trivia with me on Tuesday nights, he goes, I couldn't believe that was you. I was like, yeah, I just felt like that one needed to come out. But I do like 80s, I do some show tunes, I do some new stuff. I'm kind of all over the place, just depending. But that was it's that was sometimes this stuff has to come out of me. And that was one that did. All right, Lynn, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your influence and your insights with the influential nonprofit today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marianne, for having me.
You bet. And that's it for me in this episode of the Influential Nonprofit. Oh, and I forgot to say that we're going to put your website and your social media handles on the show notes. If anybody wants to find you and connect with you, they can do that.
Perfect.
And cradlestocrayons.org and her LinkedIn and Instagram we'll put in the show notes so you can follow her or reach out. And thanks again, Lynn.
Thank you, Marianne.